You wake up before sunrise. There is no phone beside you, no books, no music, no clock telling you the time. The air is cold, the fire has almost burned out, and the only sound is the wind pushing through the trees. You have already eaten. There is no hunt today, no emergency, no celebration. For the first time in weeks, you have absolutely nothing that demands your attention. What do you do? Today, boredom lasts a few minutes before you reach for a screen. The average person checks their phone well over 100 times a day. Your brain is surrounded by endless stimulation every waking hour. But for more than 95% of human history, none of that existed. Ancient humans sometimes faced entire days with no urgent task, no entertainment, and no guarantee that tomorrow would be any different. And strangely, those empty hours may have shaped the human mind more than the busy ones ever did. By the end of this video, you may never think about boredom the same way again. The first clue comes from a cave in southern France. In 1994, 3 explorers discovered what is now known as the Chauvet Cave. Inside were more than 400 paintings of lions, horses, rhinoceroses, mammoths, and bears. Some were created around 36,000 years ago, making them among the oldest known works of art on Earth. The strange part wasn't the paintings themselves. Many of them were hidden deep inside the cave, hundreds of meters from the entrance. There was almost no natural light. Reaching them required carrying burning torches through narrow tunnels. No one accidentally wandered there. Someone made a deliberate decision to spend hours walking into darkness just to create images that most people would never see. That doesn't look like survival. It looks like people filling time with imagination. For decades, researchers assumed prehistoric humans spent nearly every waking moment searching for food. It seemed obvious. If life was dangerous, every hour should have been devoted to staying alive. Then anthropologists started living with modern hunter-gatherer societies. In the 1960s, researchers studying the Jute people of the Kalahari Desert found something unexpected. Adults often spent only around 15 to 20 hours each week gathering food and hunting. The rest of their time was filled with conversation, repairing tools, storytelling, singing, dancing, resting, and simply sitting together. Life wasn't effortless. Food could still become scarce. Hunting could still fail. But constant work wasn't the norm many scientists had imagined. In 1966, anthropologist Marshall Salins famously described many hunter-gatherer societies as the original affluent society, not because they had wealth, but because their needs were relatively limited compared to later farming civilizations. Having free time wasn't unusual. It was part of being human. Of course, not every group lived exactly the same way. Different climates demanded different lifestyles. People living in Ice Age Europe faced challenges very different from those living in southern Africa. But one pattern kept appearing. Whenever basic needs were met, humans found ways to occupy their minds. Some carved tiny animal figures from mammoth ivory. Others shaped beads from shells carried hundreds of kilometers inland. Some spent hours decorating spear throwers with detailed carvings that had no obvious practical purpose. These objects took patience, they required planning, and they existed long before cities, kingdoms, or written language. Then archaeologists found something even stranger. In Blombos Cave, on the southern coast of South Africa, researchers uncovered pieces of ochre engraved with geometric patterns dating back roughly 75,000 years. Straight lines, crosshatches, repeated designs. No one knows exactly what they meant. They may have been symbols, they may have represented identity, or they may simply have been something satisfying to make. Think about that for a moment. A person living 75,000 years ago sat with a piece of red ochre and carefully scratched repeating patterns into its surface. Not because they were hungry, not because they were escaping danger, but because their mind wanted something to do. That urge feels surprisingly familiar. Today, people doodle during meetings. They trace shapes while talking on the phone. They stack coins, spin pens, or absent-mindedly draw circles on scraps of paper. The behavior changes. The impulse does not. Your brain dislikes empty space. When nothing demands attention, it starts creating patterns on its own. Modern neuroscience calls this the default mode network, a collection of brain regions that becomes especially active when you are resting, daydreaming, or letting your thoughts wander. For years, scientists believed the brain was mostly inactive during these quiet moments. Brain imaging studies beginning in the early 2000s revealed the opposite. Some areas actually become more active when you stop focusing on a task. Your brain begins replaying memories, imagining future events, solving problems in the background, building stories, connecting ideas that seemed unrelated only moments before. What feels like doing nothing is often your brain performing some of its most complex work. Ancient humans had far more opportunities to enter this state than you do today. Hours spent watching a fire, walking across open grasslands, waiting for animals that never appeared, sitting beneath the stars after everyone else had fallen asleep. Those quiet moments weren't empty, they were filled with thought, and that may have changed the course of human evolution. Except there was another activity that consumed those long, uneventful hours, one so ordinary that archaeologists almost overlooked its importance. That overlooked activity was conversation, not the quick exchanges you have throughout the day. Hours of it, around a fire, while repairing tools, during long walks between water sources, while waiting for meat to roast, while children played nearby. Unlike almost every other animal, humans can spend an entire evening talking about things that are not happening. A hunt that failed 3 weeks ago, a place beyond the next mountain, someone who died years earlier, a child who has not even been born yet. That ability seems ordinary today, but it is one of the strangest traits in the natural world. In 1998, British anthropologist Robin Dunbar proposed that language evolved not only to share information, but to maintain large social groups. Other primates strengthen relationships through grooming, picking through one another's fur for hours each day. Humans could never keep a group of 100 or more connected that way. Conversation became a kind of social grooming. One story told around a fire could strengthen relationships with dozens of people at once. Boredom created the perfect environment for it. When there was no immediate task, people talked, and as conversations grew longer, something unexpected happened. Stories became more complicated. A simple warning about a dangerous valley slowly turned into a tale about the spirit that lived there. A successful hunt became the story of a legendary ancestor. Facts mixed with imagination. Generation after generation, those stories became easier to remember than plain instructions. Even today, psychologists know that people remember information better when it is wrapped inside a narrative. Ancient humans discovered that long before anyone understood how memory worked. But conversation was only part of the picture. Researchers studying modern hunter-gatherer societies have noticed something else. Children often spend astonishing amounts of time simply playing. Among the Hadza of Tanzania, young children are rarely given strict schedules. Instead, they explore, invent games, imitate adults, and solve problems together for years before becoming skilled hunters or gatherers. At first glance, it looks unproductive. It isn't. Play is practice. Every imaginary hunt teaches coordination. Every game teaches cooperation. Every made-up story teaches communication. The brain learns fastest when curiosity replaces obligation. In other words, what appears to be a wasted time is often the most valuable kind. That pattern extends far beyond childhood. Adults play too. Music, dance, competition, humor, ritual. None of these directly produce food, yet every known human culture has developed them independently. Why? Because a bored brain searches for challenge. In 1938, Dutch historian Johan Huizinga argued in his book Homo Ludens that civilization itself grew out of play. Long before laws, governments, or written history, humans were inventing games, symbols, rituals, and performances. The idea remains debated, but archaeology keeps uncovering evidence that recreation is far older than anyone once believed. Bone flutes discovered in Germany date back roughly 40,000 years. Some were carefully carved from the wing bones of birds. Others came from mammoth ivory. Creating one required hours of work. Playing one served no obvious survival purpose. Unless survival involved something more than food. Music synchronizes groups. It regulates emotion. It helps memories last longer. Modern brain scans show that listening to music activates widespread networks involved in emotion, prediction, and movement. Ancient humans had no MRI machines, but they understood its effects all the same. Then there were the nights. Without electric lights, darkness transformed the world. The sun disappeared, the horizon vanished, the stars emerged with a clarity almost impossible to experience today. Before artificial lighting, the Milky Way stretched across the sky so brightly that it cast a faint shadow in some locations. Imagine seeing that every clear night of your life. No satellites, no airplanes, no glowing cities, just thousands upon thousands of stars. For countless generations, people watched those patterns move across the seasons. Eventually they noticed something remarkable. Some stars stayed fixed, others wandered. The moon followed predictable cycles. Certain constellations returned just before winter or just before migrating animals arrived. Those observations became knowledge. Knowledge became calendars. Calendars became agriculture. One of humanity's greatest technological revolutions may have begun with people simply looking up because there was nothing else to do. But boredom also had a darker side. When your mind has no immediate task, it does not only invent ideas, it also replays fears. It imagines threats. It remembers mistakes. Modern psychologists call this mind wandering. Studies suggest that people's thoughts drift away from the present task for a surprisingly large portion of their waking lives. Sometimes those thoughts inspire creativity, sometimes they create anxiety. Ancient humans likely experienced both. Sitting alone outside a campfire's glow, every sound in the darkness mattered. Every rustling branch could be wind, or a predator. The same imagination that created art also imagined danger. The same brain that invented stories could invent monsters. And that may explain why nearly every ancient culture filled the darkness with myths, spirits, and unseen beings. But there is one final discovery that changes everything we think we know about boredom itself. The biggest surprise is that boredom may never have been the real problem. The problem was having too little to think about. In 2014, psychologists at the University of Virginia published an experiment with a simple design. Volunteers sat alone in a quiet room with no phone, no books, and nothing to distract them for just 6 to 15 minutes. They were told to do nothing except remain with their own thoughts. Many participants found the experience deeply uncomfortable. Then came the most astonishing result. Some participants chose to give themselves a mild electric shock rather than continue sitting alone. A few did it multiple times. The researchers were not testing pain. They were testing the modern mind's relationship with silence. For most of human history, silence was unavoidable. Today, it has become something many people instinctively avoid. Every empty moment is quickly filled. A podcast during a walk, music while cooking, videos before bed, a quick glance at your phone while waiting in line. Your brain rarely has the chance to wander on its own. Yet wandering may be exactly what helped make us human. Many of history's greatest ideas appeared during moments of rest rather than intense concentration. In the 19th century, German chemist August Kekulé later described how the image of a snake biting its own tail came to him while daydreaming. That vision inspired his breakthrough model of the benzene ring, transforming organic chemistry. Whether every detail of the story is perfectly accurate is still debated, but the pattern is not. Creative insights often arrive after periods of reflection instead of constant effort. Neuroscientists continue to study why. When your attention relaxes, different brain networks begin sharing information more freely. Ideas that seemed unrelated suddenly connect. Problems that felt impossible become clearer. The same process may have unfolded around prehistoric campfires tens of thousands of years ago. A hunter repairing a spear might suddenly imagine a better point. A parent watching children play might invent a new teaching game. Someone staring into glowing embers might notice a pattern in the stars they had never seen before. No one wrote those moments down, but their effects remain all around you. Every language you speak, every story you tell, every song you remember, every symbol you recognize, they all trace back to minds that were given enough time to wander. The archaeological record supports this slow accumulation of thought. Between roughly 100,000 and 40,000 years ago, evidence of symbolic behavior expanded dramatically across Africa and Eurasia. Personal ornaments became more common. Cave paintings grew more sophisticated. Musical instruments appeared. Long-distance trade increased. None of these inventions happened overnight. They emerged over thousands of generations as countless small ideas accumulated. Human progress was rarely a single flash of genius. It was millions of quiet moments adding up. That changes the way you think about ancient life. It is easy to imagine prehistoric humans trapped in an endless struggle for survival. Sometimes they were. Ice ages came and went. Predators hunted them. Droughts destroyed landscapes. Many people died young. Life could be unimaginably difficult. But life was not one continuous emergency. There were pauses, afternoons with no hunt, rainy days inside shelters, long winters, endless walks across open plains, hours spent watching children, tending fires, carving wood, shaping stone, or simply sitting together beneath an enormous sky. Those pauses were not empty spaces between important events. They were the places where important events quietly began. The next time you catch yourself staring out of a window, or watching rain slide down the glass, or sitting quietly with nothing demanding your attention, it may feel like you're doing nothing, but for almost 300,000 years, moments like these were where the human mind rehearsed the future. Perhaps the greatest inventions in history were not born during humanity's busiest days. They were born during the ones that seemed the most boring.